What happens when one of Hollywood's most respected actors sits down for what should be a simple interview, only to face a host determined to tear him down on live television? It only took 24 seconds of relentless provocation for America's beloved Robert De Niro to reach his breaking point and deliver one of the most shocking walkouts in talk show history. The studio lights blazed hot that evening as Robert De Niro settled into the guest chair opposite Piers Morgan. The legendary actor had come to promote his latest film, expecting the usual friendly banter about his craft and career. Instead, he walked into what would become a masterclass in how not to conduct an interview. "Robert De Niro, welcome to the show," Morgan began, his trademark smirk already forming. "You know, I have to say, watching your recent performances, I can't help but wonder if you've lost your edge. Are your best days behind you?" De Niro's eyebrows raised slightly, caught off guard by the aggressive opening. "Well, Piers, I think my work speaks for itself. I'm still passionate about acting, still choosing projects that challenge me." "Challenge you?" Morgan leaned forward, sensing weakness like a predator. "Come on, Robert, let's be honest here. Your last 3 films bombed at the box office. Critics are saying you're phoning it in. Surely you must feel like you're past your prime?" The camera captured the slight tightening around De Niro's eyes, but his voice remained measured. "I don't make movies for box office numbers, Piers. I make them because I believe in the stories we're telling." "Stories?" Morgan scoffed, his voice dripping with condescension. "Or are they just easy paychecks? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you're taking any role that comes your way these days. Whatever happened to the Robert De Niro who was selective, who demanded excellence?" De Niro shifted in his chair, his jaw clenching almost imperceptibly. "I think you're misunderstanding what drives an artist, Piers. It's not about proving yourself to critics or chasing trends. It's about continuing to grow, to explore different facets of human experience." "Human experience?" Morgan's laugh was sharp and mocking. "Robert, you've been playing the same character for the last decade. The gruff New York guy with daddy issues. Where's the range? Where's the Robert De Niro who gave us Travis Bickle and Jake LaMotta?" The veteran actor's hands gripped the armrests of his chair slightly tighter. "Every role is different, Piers. If you actually watch the films instead of just reading box office reports, you might understand that." Morgan's eyes gleamed with malicious delight. "Oh, I've watched them, Robert. That's the problem. They're forgettable, mediocre at best." "And speaking of mediocre, let's talk about your personal life. Your multiple marriages, your reputation for being difficult on set. Do you think your personal failures have affected your ability to connect with audiences?" The question hung in the air like a toxic cloud. De Niro's face darkened, his famous intensity now focused entirely on his host. "My personal life is not up for discussion here, Piers. We agreed this was about my work." "But your personal life is your work now, isn't it?" Morgan pressed on, relentless. "The tabloids, the gossip columns, the behind-the-scenes drama. That's what people know you for these days, not your acting." De Niro's voice dropped to a dangerous whisper. "You're crossing a line here." "Am I?" Morgan's smile was purely predatory now. "Or am I just asking the questions your fans want answers to, the questions other interviewers are too intimidated to ask? Come on, Robert. You're supposed to be this tough guy from the streets. Surely you can handle a few direct questions?" The studio audience shifted uncomfortably in their seats, sensing the building tension. Camera operators zoomed in on De Niro's face, capturing every micro-expression of barely contained fury. "Direct questions?" De Niro repeated slowly. "Is that what you call this ambush? This character assassination, disguised as journalism?" Morgan leaned back in his chair, supremely confident in his position. "I call it honest conversation, Robert, something this industry desperately needs more of. Too many actors hide behind publicists and carefully crafted images. I'm giving you a chance to be real." "Real?" De Niro's voice began to rise. "You want real? Real is respecting someone enough to have an actual conversation instead of trying to humiliate them for your ratings." "Ratings?" Morgan feigned surprise. "This isn't about ratings, Robert. This is about accountability. You've coasted on your reputation for years. Someone needs to call you out." The legendary actor stood up slightly in his chair, his patience finally wearing thin. "Call me out? Who the hell do you think you are to call me out? You're a tabloid hack who got lucky with a television show." Morgan's mask slipped for just a moment, revealing genuine anger beneath the calculated provocation. "A hack? I'm one of the most respected interviewers in television. I've interviewed presidents, prime ministers, the most powerful people in the world." Respected? De Niro laughed bitterly. Is this what you call respect? Bringing someone on your show under false pretenses just to tear them down? This isn't journalism, Piers. This is a hit job. The host recovered quickly, his smirk returning. A hit job? Robert, I'm simply holding a mirror up to your career. If you don't like what you see, maybe that's something you need to examine. De Niro's eyes blazed with righteous anger. The only thing I need to examine is why I agreed to come on this show in the first place. Morgan sensed his guest slipping away and doubled down on his attacks. Maybe because deep down, you know I'm right. Maybe because you're tired of the pretense, tired of pretending you're still the actor you used to be. The words hit De Niro like physical blows, each one designed to wound. But instead of breaking him, they seemed to crystallize his resolve. When he spoke again, his voice was deadly calm. You know what, Piers? You're absolutely right about one thing. I am tired. I'm tired of people like you who think tearing others down makes good television. The studio fell into an eerie silence as De Niro's words hung in the air like a gathering storm. Morgan, however, mistook the actor's controlled fury for weakness and pressed forward with his verbal assault. Tearing others down? Morgan's voice carried mock indignation. Robert, I'm trying to have an honest conversation about your declining relevance in Hollywood. If that makes you uncomfortable, maybe you should ask yourself why. De Niro's knuckles whitened as he gripped the chair arms. Declining relevance? I've been in this business for over 50 years. I've earned the right to choose my own path without some British tabloid reporter questioning my every decision. British tabloid reporter? Morgan's face flushed red with anger. I've won awards for my journalism, Robert. I've broken major stories, interviewed world leaders. What have you done lately besides cash paychecks for forgettable movies? The audience gasped audibly at the blatant disrespect. De Niro's eyes narrowed to dangerous slits. What have I done? I've dedicated my life to my craft. I've worked with the greatest directors of our time, told stories that mattered. You make a living by ambushing people and calling it journalism. Morgan's composure was cracking, his carefully constructed persona beginning to crumble. Ambushing? This is called holding celebrities accountable, Robert. Something this town desperately needs. You actors live in your bubble, surrounded by yes-men telling you how wonderful you are. I'm giving you a reality check. A reality check? De Niro leaned forward, his voice dropping to a menacing whisper. Here's your reality check, Piers. You invited me here under false pretenses. You told my people this was going to be a respectful interview about my work. Instead, you've turned it into some kind of public execution. The host's mask slipped completely now, revealing the petty bully beneath. Public execution? Oh, please, Robert, stop being so dramatic. This is just good television. People want to see their heroes knocked down a peg. It makes for better ratings. There it is, De Niro said, his voice filled with disgust. You finally admit it. This isn't about truth or journalism. It's about ratings. It's about feeding your audience's worst instincts by humiliating your guests. Morgan tried to regain control, but his voice betrayed his desperation. I'm not humiliating anyone, Robert. I'm asking tough questions. If you can't handle that, maybe you shouldn't be doing interviews. Tough questions? De Niro's laugh was bitter and harsh. Tough questions would be about my process, my choices as an artist, my thoughts on the industry. What you're doing is character assassination disguised as entertainment. The camera captured every nuance of the escalating conflict. Morgan's face was now visibly sweating under the studio lights, his confident demeanor completely evaporated. Character assassination? I'm simply pointing out that your best work is behind you. That's not assassination, that's observation. De Niro stood up fully now, his 6-foot frame imposing even in his 70s. My best work is behind me? Let me tell you something about work, Piers. Real work involves respect, preparation, and integrity. 3 things you clearly know nothing about. The host scrambled to maintain his attack, but his voice cracked with panic. Integrity? Robert, you've made more bad movies in the last 10 years than most actors make in their entire careers. Where's the integrity in that? The integrity, De Niro said, his voice rising with righteous anger, is in continuing to work, continuing to challenge myself, continuing to tell stories even when parasites like you try to tear down everything I've built. Morgan's face turned purple with rage. Parasites? I'm a respected journalist. Robert, I have millions of viewers who tune in to see honest conversations with celebrities who think they're above criticism. Honest conversations? De Niro's voice boomed through the studio. There's nothing honest about this hit piece you've orchestrated. You brought me here to feed me to the wolves, to make yourself look tough by taking down a soft target. The audience was completely silent now, mesmerized by the raw emotion unfolding before them. Morgan made one last desperate attempt to regain the upper hand. Soft target? Robert, you're one of the most celebrated actors of all time. If you can't handle a few pointed questions, maybe you're not as tough as your movie characters. That was the final straw. De Niro's famous temper, the one he'd kept carefully controlled throughout his career, finally erupted. Pointed questions? You want to see tough, Piers? You want to see what happens when you push a real New Yorker too far? Morgan shrank back in his chair, suddenly realizing he'd awakened something dangerous. Robert, let's just calm down here. This is live television. Oh, now you're concerned about live television? De Niro's voice was pure thunder. Where was that concern when you were trying to humiliate me in front of millions of people? When you were attacking my personal life, my family, my integrity? The host's voice became pleading, pathetic. I was just doing my job, Robert. It's nothing personal. Nothing personal? De Niro's eyes blazed with fury. You made it personal the moment you decided to ambush me instead of having a real conversation. You made it personal when you chose to be a bully instead of a journalist. Morgan tried one last time to salvage the situation. Robert, please sit down. Let's finish the interview professionally. De Niro looked at him with pure contempt. Professionally? You wouldn't know professionalism if it bit you on your entitled British ass. This interview is over. The legendary actor began removing his microphone, his movements sharp and decisive. Morgan's desperation was now complete, his carefully constructed show falling apart in real time. Robert, please, Morgan begged. Don't walk out. We can talk about your new movie. We can change direction. De Niro paused, microphone halfway off, and looked directly into the camera. When he spoke, his words were measured but filled with volcanic rage that seemed ready to erupt at any second. De Niro's steely gaze pierced through the camera lens as if he were speaking directly to every viewer watching at home. The studio was so quiet you could hear the hum of the television equipment, everyone holding their breath for what would come next. You want to know about my new movie? De Niro said, his voice controlled but seething with barely contained rage. My new movie is about dignity. It's about respect. Two things this man knows absolutely nothing about. Morgan squirmed in his seat like a trapped animal. Robert, come on, sit back down. Let's have a civil discussion. Civil? De Niro turned back to face his tormentor, the microphone now dangling from his hand. You threw civility out the window the moment you decided to turn this into an ambush. You want civil? Try treating your guests like human beings instead of pieces of meat you can tear apart for entertainment. The host's voice cracked with desperation. I treat all my guests the same way, Robert. I ask the hard questions that need to be asked. Hard questions? De Niro's laugh was harsh and mocking. Piers, you wouldn't know a hard question if it slapped you in your smug face. Hard questions require intelligence, preparation, and respect for your subject. All you've shown tonight is ignorance and cruelty. Morgan tried to stand up, perhaps thinking he could physically intimidate the older man. But De Niro's presence filled the space like a force of nature. The host remained seated, visibly shrinking under the actor's withering stare. Robert, you're making a mistake, Morgan stammered. Walking out will only make you look bad. Think about your reputation. My reputation? De Niro's voice rose to a roar. My reputation was built over 50 years of honest work, not by ambushing people on television shows. My reputation will survive just fine without your approval or your pathetic attempt at character assassination. The camera operators zoomed in on Morgan's face, capturing every beat of sweat, every nervous twitch. The man who had seemed so confident at the beginning of the interview now looked like what he truly was, a small, petty bully who had finally picked on someone who wouldn't be intimidated. Please, Robert, Morgan begged, his British accent making his pleading sound even more pathetic. Don't do this. Think about the viewers. They came to see you. De Niro stopped removing his microphone and fixed Morgan with a look that could melt steel. The viewers? You mean the people you just tried to turn against me? The people you wanted to watch you tear me down like some gladiator sport? Those viewers? That's not what this was, Morgan protested weakly. This was legitimate journalism. Legitimate journalism? De Niro's voice dripped with contempt. Piers, you're not a journalist. You're a carnival barker. You're the guy who sells tickets to watch the freak show. And tonight, you tried to make me the freak. Morgan's last shred of composure evaporated completely. I'm one of the most respected interviewers in the business, Robert. Presidents have sat in that chair." "Presidents?" De Niro shook his head in disgust. "If this is how you treat presidents, no wonder the world thinks so little of journalism these days. You've turned what should be an honorable profession into a blood sport." The studio audience began to murmur among themselves, clearly seeing through Morgan's facade. The host looked around desperately, realizing that even his own audience was turning against him. "Robert, you're being unfair," Morgan whined. "I was just trying to get honest answers from you." "Honest answers?" De Niro's eyes blazed with righteous fury. "Here's an honest answer for you, Piers. You're a fraud. You're a man who makes his living by destroying other people's dignity, and you call it entertainment. You're everything that's wrong with modern media." Morgan made one final desperate attempt to salvage his show. "The audience deserves to hear from you, Robert. Don't disappoint them." De Niro turned to look at the audience, his expression softening slightly as he addressed them directly. "Ladies and gentlemen, I came here tonight to talk about my work, to share some stories about my craft. Instead, I was subjected to a public humiliation designed to make this man look tough at my expense." The audience erupted in supportive applause, clearly siding with the legendary actor. Morgan's face went white as he realized he had completely lost control of his own show. De Niro continued, his voice now calm but filled with authority. "I've been in this business long enough to know the difference between a real interview and a hit job. This was a hit job, pure and simple, and I won't be part of it." Morgan tried one last time, his voice breaking with panic. "Robert, please, just 5 more minutes. Let me ask you about your new film properly." The actor looked at him with something approaching pity. "Piers, you had your chance. You could have had a real conversation with me about my work, my process, my thoughts on acting and filmmaking. Instead, you chose to be a bully. That was your choice, and now you have to live with the consequences." With that, De Niro completely removed his microphone and placed it carefully on the table between them. The gesture was final, definitive. He stood up to his full height and looked down at the cowering host. "You know what the real tragedy is here, Piers?" De Niro said, his voice now quiet but carrying incredible power. "You actually had talent once. I remember your early work. You could have been a real journalist. Instead, you chose to become a parasite, feeding off other people's accomplishments." Morgan was now visibly shaking, all pretense of control completely gone. "Robert, don't leave like this. We can start over." De Niro smiled, but it wasn't a kind smile. It was the smile of a man who had finally exposed a fraud for what he truly was. "Start over? Piers, some things can't be undone. You showed your true colors tonight, and everyone saw them." The legendary actor began walking toward the exit, his dignity intact despite the ambush he had endured. Morgan called after him desperately, "This will be remembered, Robert. You walking out will be the story." De Niro stopped and turned back one final time, his eyes filled with a mixture of contempt and pity. "You're absolutely right, Piers. This will be remembered, but not the way you think. People will remember the night a respected actor stood up to a bully and refused to be humiliated for entertainment." With those final words, Robert De Niro walked off the set, leaving behind a broken host, a stunned audience, and a television moment that would be talked about for years to come. The camera lingered on Morgan's devastated face as the reality of what had just happened sank in. The man who thought he could destroy a legend had instead destroyed himself, and everyone watching knew it. The show continued for a few more painful minutes, but it was over the moment De Niro stood up. In trying to tear down one of cinema's greatest actors, Piers Morgan had instead revealed himself to be exactly what De Niro had called him, a small, petty man who confused cruelty with journalism and ratings with respect.